You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into another important conversation. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will on Wednesday make his third attempt at the budget. He faces some tough tasks of trying to find alternative revenue sources in order to plug a 75 billion rand shortfall. This is the result of the withdrawal of the controversial VAT increase. African Investment and Research Chief Executive Dr. Iraj Abedian joining us now for more on this. Dr. Abedian, good evening to you, and thank you as always for talking to us. Let's start with Team South Africa that is headed to the United States, led by the President, Cyril Ramaphosa. I know I'm diverting your attention here, but the messaging that this team carries to America, it could have potential for either making our fiscal space better to manage, or it could potentially get worse. Your thoughts on what they should be saying there?
You're absolutely right. That message, if it's negative, if the president and his team don't manage President Trump and the broader movements and emotions around it, it could have really serious consequences for our economy, not just this year in terms of GDP growth, but in the next 3-4 years, which we can least or very, very desperately afford. So, yeah, it's a very, very different type of environment that they are walking into, and they better be prepared. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and how do you get your messaging correct in an environment where it's almost predetermined that you are going there defensively? And I might just add that the intensity of narrative warfare has never been higher.
Yeah, the narrative has been stacked up against us. There's no question about it. But I think the task of the president and his team, or I say delegation, is to not too much focus on the narrative and correcting the errors and the misinformation and misrepresentation, rather bring in, to begin with, a package of what Mr. Trump or President Trump calls it, give me a deal. And the deal is not just about the messaging on the specific issues that's in the media. The deal is about a whole set of geopolitical as well as economic benefits. And that my suggestion, quite frankly, would be spend no more than 5 minutes on the misinformation and the messaging, and spend the rest of the time on structuring a win-win deal. And that's what President Trump wants.
Yeah. Let's then drill into the budget expectations. Many opinions are abound as to what we could hear on Wednesday. I was reading one opinion today in the business section of the Sunday Times, and one caught my attention. It says, revenue is the rub for Budget 3.0. Where do you stand?
Absolutely. It's about, we know that the revenue is going to be, even now, in terms of estimates, less than what the minister was hoping back in February. So the revenue side is not in a good space because our growth is not there. And that shouldn't come to us as a surprise, quite frankly. We've known that for the past 15 years, our economic growth has been neglected. And I keep repeating and reminding ourselves that late Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch stood at the parliament explaining to the nation and to the parliamentarians that unless we get growth back on track and quickly and urgently, we're going to run into trouble. And in fact, nobody listened to him, and we have run into trouble. So growth is not going to rescue us this year. This year, the fiscal management, I hope the minister will come boldly, is about expenditure management. It's about cutting inefficiency. It's about being brutal, literally, to get expenditure under control, because revenue can only go up that much, and we're already back foot. Our growth is going to be terribly low this year.
Yeah,
it's mid-year and nothing has changed. However, I think expenditure management also is not the answer for the medium to long term. Many economists have argued, and I firmly believe that this year we may not have much options, but the minister and the cabinet more broadly need to shift the focus from expenditure management, go on to growth, and not talking about growth, but really forming a national emergency scheme or plan, much more urgent than what we had to do during COVID. Our growth is being absolutely neglected, and our underpinning of our economy is not lending itself to growth of more than 1%. That cannot in the medium to long term be sustainable. Therefore, I'm hoping that as part of the budget speech, the minister will announce soon, meaning within a week or two of the budget speech after it's passed through the parliament and government is secured of its funding for running the services that are needed, the national government has to spend time, emergency time, on getting growth back. And it cannot do it by itself. It got to get business on the same page. It got to get other stakeholders, labor, and a whole lot of others who have been worrying about growth to turn the growth around. And growth in turning around is not getting it to 2%. We got to restructure our economy to aim at getting to 4.5% in the next 3 years.
Yeah. Where are the bottlenecks on this growth story? Because we have been hammering on it for the last 15 years, as one of the guests reminded me last week on this show, that if you look back at South Africa's economic growth, it has been growing at a pedestrian rate for the last 15 years. So how do we get it pumping? I mean, Eskom is now doing slightly better than what it was some 2-3 years back. What is where are the bottlenecks?
The bottlenecks are at two levels. One, and very importantly, and again, the irony of it is that the government is aware of it. As I mentioned, we go back to what National Treasury and Minister Mboweni, late Minister Mboweni, God bless his soul, put on the table. The bottlenecks were identified. We don't have to spend an hour to discuss what the bottlenecks are. It's our infrastructure or network economies that Transnet is not operating and all its subsidiaries, which is rail, port, and so on. Our national water schemes are not offering, and our national municipalities, especially the metros, are undermining our growth. So those underpinning of our economy requires not a political solution. There is nothing political about it. It's technical. It's about technical, and it's about the regulation that governs those technical turnarounds. So that's one bottleneck. The second bottleneck is the government itself. The cabinet got to get from a mindset of creating more and more administrative burden on the economy to do the opposite. And in fact, again, it's in the NDP, believe it or not. This first chapter of NDP, to create a capable state. You cannot talk the way our states run as capable. And therefore, to the extent that it's been over-politicized, literally beyond belief, it has debilitated the state as opposed to creating a capable state. So those two got to be gotten right. Unless we get them right, the investor cannot invest, the confidence cannot come back, local and international money cannot, and in fact should not, go to an economy that is got an incapable machinery of the state and it's got the underpinning that are way out of dysfunction. Yeah. You cannot call Eskom a turnaround. Eskom is a very expensive operator. It's a very inefficient operator. Transnet is a very expensive and inefficient or unreliable operator, and so on and so forth. Our water supply and our municipalities, especially the metros, are dysfunctional. So we need to be very realistic with ourselves, and we know what the problems are. We need to get off the political high horse and pay attention to the technical competencies that requires to run a complex economy like us in the 21st century.
I can't end the conversation without adding one more story on what you've already set out. So you've said there's got to be a cutback on waste, and the government has got to manage efficiencies well or better. Corruption. Where do we stand on that score in this government of national unity? Do you carry the hopes of it being eliminated?
Eliminate, no, because it's become such a part of culture of running the government, unfortunately. The acting DG of National Treasury once said it formally, that our operations of the government has become a mafia state, meaning even before the budget is announced, some people know who will get the contract, what will be spent on what, and what will not be delivered. Not what will be delivered, what will not be delivered. Now, that you cannot turn around quickly. The president has been talking now for 6-7 years, talking about corruption and cutting it. We don't see any sign of that diminishing. So that requires a different approach altogether. And part of what I was saying earlier on, that we have gotten used to a particular mindset, and that mindset has, in my view, normalized the abnormal. Corruption must be an exception, not the norm. Unfortunately, in most of the government departments, it's become the norm. And it's very difficult to change it unless we government at the top level, at the president's level, all the way down, change their mindset that it is not their job to accept the normalization of corruption, normalization of full service delivery. That comes, these two are interrelated, colleague.
Yeah.
Corruption and full service delivery are the twins. And therefore, unless the president and the cabinet come out on that heavy and really a real step change, not to justify, not to promise, not to cover each other's back, but to recognize that unless that cancer is removed from the body of the government, we're going to have this discussion again and again, and the people are going to suffer.
Yeah. Finally, and briefly, if you can, the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, there appears to be hope this time around that Budget 3.0, he is likely to get it over the line. With that said, is he still the right man for the job? There are those who have been calling for his head. Does he still have credibility?
There's no question that Minister Godongwana has not done himself any favor with flip-flopping on things and with actually mismanaging the situation from the start. Is he the right man for the job? That's the job of the president. But the question often in this situation is, do we have a better person? And that requires, again, a mindset change. But what I can assure you, and it's an obvious fact, Minister has lost a lot of credibility. If he comes up with a super-duper budget 3.0, he may regain some of his lost credibility. Otherwise, he's on his way down.
Dr. Iraj Abedian, thank you very much for your time this evening. Always saying it like it is.